welcome everyone to today's session. It is our final session of the peer learning series, but we're going to talk more about whether it's truly the final session and if we want to keep continuing this group, because we might want to do that. But our topic today is really focused on leadership development, building allies, and kind of framing our mindset kind of moving forward, and how do we want to think about the work that we're doing, and what direction we want to go in, and then just taking a moment to pause and reflect on this series together and really talk about some leadership strategies. So with that said, if you go to the next slide, I think a lot of us know each other, but I would love for you all to introduce yourself in the chat. And I think in terms of visioning, my icebreaker question for today is, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? So put that in the chat. I don't know if all of you said food service directors, but yeah, but and then we are going to be recording today. We're going to be hearing from some really fantastic guest speakers. We are just so excited to have a few people joining us to really kind of have this conversation around leadership. We will be doing some breakout sessions just to talk about next steps and what we want to do moving forward. And then at the end of the call, we will be kind of soliciting some feedback just to continue this. And then next slide. So I'm putting some announcements right at the front of the call. And I'll repeat this at the end of the call, but we are in the process of creating some really great marketing materials focused on climate-friendly food. And so if you're interested in providing some feedback on those marketing materials, maybe we have another call about it and we go over those. If you're interested in providing feedback, just put the word yes in the chat and we'd love to get connected with you. I'm also going to link our quarterly newsletter in the chat. We'd love for you to just continue to stay connected with us. Last session, we talked about our USDA sign-on letter, and that's still open. So if you want to sign on to that, that's around meal pattern recommendations. We definitely welcome you to sign that letter. We still are taking feedback. And then at the end of the call, we are going to have a feedback survey. So I'm going to still drop it in the chat, but you're welcome to kind of hang on. We're going to go over that together at the end of the call. And then I'm seeing like marine biologists, people loving to work with food, fishing, pastry chef, own a bakery. I'm loving this. Emma wants to be an SNL cast member. I think you could. I think you could still live up to that dream if you wanted to, Emma. Well, this is wonderful. I'm loving the answers to this question. I think for myself, I wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to be a teacher, but like something more. I like wanted to do a bigger group of people. So I feel like I get to do that in my job every day, which is pretty cool. So again, I dropped those links into the chat. Feel welcome to sign up for our newsletter, and the USDA sign-on letter is still open. And then again, that survey we'll do at the end of the call. So next slide. All right, so I'm just gonna I'm hopping right into it today. So this is session 6, which is our final session of the series. And like an opportunity for us to kind of reflect. It's been chaotic with the pandemic. I know a lot of you are kind of dealing with some challenges in terms of menu planning for next year, kind of doing some like foreshadowing for the future. And that, I think we're always kind of running. It's like almost like on a hamster wheel and running. And I think it's a moment we really wanted to take a moment to just pause, reflect, and do some inward reflection on our leadership and where do we want to go. I typed in the word plant for this slide, and then I got this top right yellowish plant. And I thought that was kind of appropriate because, some days you can feel like that yellowish plant. that's not doing well. And so how do we move from that yellowish plant to more of like a green plant that's really thriving and really deriving meaning from our work? And then next slide. And then I think Nancy shared this on our 4th session, and I just want to share this photo real briefly. She mentioned that sometimes it can feel like we're salmon swimming upstream and there's like a bear that's going to catch us. So we're all like trying to do this work and we're all trying to swim upstream. And so how can we really kind of swim upstream together? So I loved that analogy because I can relate to that sometimes. And again, I think it's just how do we kind of keep the momentum moving forward? So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who is going to really kick off our conversation. And we're so grateful to have Jen join us. Thank you so much, Jen. And Jen, I'll have you kind of share your background and introduce yourself and take it away from here.
Sure. So whoever's advancing slides, could you just move it to the next one, please? So hello, everyone, and I really appreciate you welcoming me into your space, even though maybe you didn't welcome me quite yet because you don't know who I am, but for Nora for inviting me. I am a pretty much like a group facilitator. My husband and I work with our own little company called Kitchen Table Consulting. And our role really in the food system space is mostly we work with nonprofit organizations that are trying to figure out how to collaborate together, and we help them kind of smooth out the edges a little bit. And a lot of ways that we do this is we create powerful questions to ask people, get them thinking and reflecting and connecting. But specifically to the school food world, I've worked in the school food environment for a long time, long time for me, which is like 7 years, in the consultancy world, mostly in policy, advocacy, research, kind of at the back end of supporting you all in accomplishing the things that you really want to accomplish for your programs. I worked for Friends of the Earth several years ago and helped organize the convenings that we did for green school food. I did one in Southern California and one in the kind of upstate New York area. And I also helped write the Scaling Up Climate Friendly School Food Strategies for Success report. And through that work specifically, I had an opportunity to talk with food service directors and staff all across the country and just learn so much about what fabulous people you are in the world and how you're essentially doing God's work, if I may say, and that so much of the work that you do comes from your heart. And I was also, this presentation has really, was inspired by Miguel Villarreal, who some of you may know from Novato, who really spoke a lot about, transforming the system of school food, and that a leadership mindset for him was like the number one piece of like the puzzle. Because he's like, it has to start with me. And so from those conversations I had with Miguel, I started thinking, well, what are some powerful questions I could ask or help craft for school food service directors, kind of specific to the climate friendly school food conversation, but also just kind of, from that space of like, well, who am I being? Like what, how can I become something more for in service of my service to the kids that I'm serving and my staff and my program? As you can see on here too, I've worked in Mendocino and Lake County primarily. I live up in Mendocino County, up in Ukiah, and I've worked on several farm to school grants, and also have helped kind of create like a collaborative of school food service professionals who are working to help build out our local food hub, which has been like instrumental in forward contracting around farm to school. We also created these Feeding Our Future events, which were like really like celebrations of school food service staff to like, give them an opportunity to like come to a winery and get goodie bags and talk about making salad dressings and sort of like, how do we work together to overcome a lot of the challenges specifically to farm to school, but also just in preparing more freshly prepared meals and, storing things and stuff like that. And then right now I'm actually working with the Center for Eco-Literacy, which some of you may know about. And I'm really working more on the policy side, helping to work through the implementation of the School Meals for All legislation. And right now, obviously, we're kind of waiting for the governor to release his budget and tell us how much money we can have for that. So that's sort of why I am passionate about communicating with you all. And I just, again, I'm grateful for this opportunity to have a conversation. And so before we get started and we move into the next slide, I would love for you to just take a moment, take a deep breath, and just think about for yourself. Well, if I'm thinking about a leadership mindset, what's my current leadership mindset? Like, how do I relate to myself as a leader? And what are some of the stories I tell myself about that? So maybe just take a minute to just take a deep breath in, release it out, and just situate yourself in your own headspace around your leadership. And then we can move on to the next slide. So you all have been spending the last 5 sessions, I guess, kind of talking about the external. You've been talking about, tools and resources and partners and programmatic things and probably some structures. And but today we're going to talk about the internal, right? We're going to talk about kind of like, I'm going to mention a little bit about our attitudes about things, our vision, our ideas, and then how our ideas can become like, our ideas, like the bigger we, the bigger our. We're going to talk a little bit about human systems, kind of like the way in which like our minds kind of operate to get to from, vision to possibility to change to action, et cetera. And again, like how that kind of head and heart sort of connect to make it all possible. Because obviously, I'm sure, as you all know, I mean, so much of the work that you do comes from love. And I really believe, like, my own value system is that this is heart work, and that when we give ourselves the space to connect to our heart, we can start to design from that place. And I think in some ways that makes the world a little bit of a better place. Rather than like, I know I've got to get all these things done and I've got my to-do list, but like, okay, stopping to really think about like, well, where's this coming from, right? So you can move on to the next slide. And again, this presentation is kind of short. I mean, it's really just to kind of situate you all in the conversation around leadership mindset. But, as Nora was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of chaos going on right now. And this map is just, it's nothing like, it's not like, oh, these are like things that are like a map, but it's more just like, here's some things that have happened over time in the last few years, right? We had a pandemic. I don't know if you all heard. And then, obviously there was like the pre-pandemic world where it was like, you were dealing with, the National School Lunch Program, and it was what it was. And during the pandemic, you had the opportunity to see like, oh, like, wow, this is how we can start to, work together in new ways and deal with like extreme challenge. And like, how do I function when I'm hardly sleeping? And, how does my staff deal with things? And, how are we handling supply chain issues? And, what kind of kitchen things do we need to kind of like start doing things in a new way? How did people rally around the work that we were doing? And it started to kind of, ease in, create a new reality in some ways. And now you all are in a space of where like school meals for all is going to happen, soon. And then there's the whole waiver conversation and the paperwork around all this stuff. I sat in on a couple CDE listening sessions around like implementation of school meals for all. And literally hundreds of school food service directors were like, I'm sorry, excuse me, how does this work? Like, what are the paperwork requirements? Wait, we're going to have to like recreate all this, and all the creative ideas that were coming out of like how people were even expressing the possibility of this to their parents and the, administration, et cetera. It felt to me very chaotic, and it's already on top of something else, and then inside of a world of a bunch of chaos. And the tension that is this place will inevitably lead to some change, right? It's just the way things work. So a new future based on some new systems is going to arise out of this, but you all actually have a voice in that. And so it's an opportunity to think about like, okay, what do I need to advocate for? Do I have staffing needs that really need to be addressed? Some skill building, do I need some specific kitchen equipment that yay, like maybe you applied for some of that kitchen infrastructure improvement funding that is coming around the bend, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to actually maybe get this, and like we can make some things happen. And so what possibilities are arising from that? Maybe you're dealing with distribution issues and trucks and storage and whatever that is, or you've got some farm to school stuff, or you, as Nora mentioned, like dealing with some menu changes because of a million things. So that chaos of all that stuff, plus your daily lives of having to deal with your jobs and what have you, like is an opportunity. And so I was really hoping that, we could create some space today for just kind of tiptoeing into that space a little bit, starting to like get not that your gears haven't already been working around solutions, et cetera, but kind of thinking more internally about like, okay, who am I in all this, right? And who have I been in all of this? And first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for who you've all been in all this, for whatever level of, experience or service or whatever that is that you've had. It's been a huge gift to so many families over the last few years, and just, so you can move on to the next slide. So like I just said, who are you becoming? Or we could just move on to the slide before this one. It would be great. Yeah. But if you just wanted to take a second to even just think about that, who are you becoming? We're all becoming something new. And it's like, there's the who we are, the who we're becoming, and the who we don't even know we're becoming, right? And sometimes it's hard to even think like, well, how would I even get there? And so in my mind, this, I say cycle, but really it's maybe more like a framework or just a way of looking at how things shift. And it's information that's out there in the whole wide world. Like, it's not like I made it up or anything. I'm just passing it on and giving us an opportunity to reflect on it today. But like, there's the current state. There's the story of what's happening right now. Like, all the stories, all of the things, how I acted the other day when someone, like maybe you snapped at somebody, or maybe you were like totally inspiring and you're like, look at me, I was being totally inspiring, like, yay. And then there's the what's possible, there's so many possibilities out there that sometimes when we're running around operating our lives, we don't give ourselves an opportunity to see. So it's honoring that time where we take to just pause for a second and just be like, oh, wait. So, and getting curious about like, well, what's possible here? Like, is there a possibility, like the third choice I haven't even thought of yet? And making some space for that. I'm going to go back to even like my vision, right? So there's like the vision you might have for what could be possible. And then there's the opportunity to like take your vision and like bring it out from inside of your head and make it our vision for the folks in your community, your staff, your administration, your superintendent, like whoever that is. There might be someone who wants your vision. And then there's the ways in which we can design things from intention. Really designing things from like our heart and like the dreams that we have in the world. I was in a call earlier today and someone was like, well, we can vision big, but we can keep the bar low, so it's like baby stepping our way into, a design for something that might be different, but not like making everybody like, oh my gosh, it's all this change, I can't handle it, it's too much. It's like, okay, well, we're just gonna be intentional about how we bring our vision into the world, be intentional about the ways in which we use our resources, our money, our allies, et cetera. Like really thinking about like what value is my vision bringing to, the overall picture of things. And then there's this, kind of time in all of this. It comes like in all the little different parts of this cycle, this framework is like the constant releasing of like our fears. Is this idea good? Or no one's, or we don't have time for this, or I don't have time, or just judging ourselves for like wanting to step out when, it's like, well, this system was designed for a reason. Like, we can't change it. Right. Like, or whatever that is, it's like the system won't let me do these things, or, just allowing the wall to like, for us to hit the wall and then not be curious about how to break through it. And then part of that too is like all the like big and little steps we can take, little pieces of action here and there, even if it's like taking 15 minutes to like hide under your desk and just breathe for a few minutes and just being like, I just need some personal space for just like 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever that is, to just think about like, again, that kind of like your vision again, or where are things right now, or what's possible, or what could I design right now that could be helpful? What is this feeling I'm having? Can I release this? Who am I? Who am I becoming? Who am I being right now? So I'm talking a lot and I'm talking fast, and I apologize for that, but I also get nervous when I'm presenting to people. But, it's just that the idea with this is just that there are ways in which our human system operates in the space of who we become as leaders, but we need to start with being leaders inside of ourselves, and then take that leadership and step outside of ourselves and share it with others. So you can move on to the next slide. So this is really part of the work for today, are some questions. So later on, we're gonna meet in whatever format, and we're gonna kind of talk through some of this stuff. But so these are just some, what we call powerful questions to get you thinking about things. So, for your vision, right? It's like, well, what is my vision for our program now moving forward? Like, what would I really love to have happen? And then how can I share that with other people? Like, who else needs to be a part of this vision? Who is the hour in the hour way of defining things? And it could be a teeny little hour. Maybe it's just me and my staff. Maybe it's me and the administration. Maybe it's, me and, a bunch of, folks that we're on a grant together, like whatever that is. And then thinking about possibility. I like to use the word tendrils. It's like, yes, we can all get caught up in this idea of like, oh my gosh, it's possible that, we would have all the money in the world and we could do whatever we wanted, right? But like, what are the little baby pieces of possibility that could even just shift something in the smallest of ways that could maybe later have a bigger impact, or could be foundation tendrils that can grow into something else, or a seed that could be planted, or a seed that could be watered. Just like what's out there that needs my attention, that has the possibility of like creating something that could be more impactful. And then how would I design what I say and do so that it's based in love, so that it's based in what's possible, so that it's based in, who I see myself becoming for my community. So many times we're just like designing things because we like have to, or we're afraid we're not gonna, pass some sort of, regulation if we don't design something a certain way, but it's like, can we just infuse a little bit of love in there? Not that that's not who you're being every day, because that's the work that you do in the world is love work, I think. But how do we intentionally design with that in mind? And then again, like, what fears do I need to release? And I sort of left some words off of this, I just noticed, but like to take it to the next step, to take it to the next level, to, take it to someone else, to take it, right? Maybe I didn't intentionally leave or accidentally leave those words off. I don't know. What do I need to let go of in terms of fear? And then what judgments do I need to give up so that I can allow this new vision to take a hold? And again, these releasing things, it's such internal work, because first you actually have to notice it, right? You have to it's almost like, what's that? Halt. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or just halt. Am I being afraid of something right now? Am I judging myself for something I just did or thought? I truly just believe that if we can start to release our fears and our judgments to ourselves, that's a part of kind of clearing the leadership space in our minds to make the world into a better place that we all know is possible, right? And then I love to think of these big, what do they call them? The big hairy goals or whatever. It's like, what's the scariest step I could take? And it's not that you have to take it, but it's that you have to give yourself permission to think it, so that you can start to engage with yourself and that fear. You can start to integrate those feelings that you get when you're like, oh, that would be a scary thing. That would be a big, huge step. And I don't know if everyone's ready for that. But if you can't even internalize like the feelings that you get around it, other people aren't going to be able to, really step into it either. So when you can start that work in yourself, like, okay, well, I just thought of the big, huge, scary thing. And yeah, it was scary, but I didn't die, like I can actually gave me some ideas, that I didn't know I had, and then you kind of come back up to that vision or that possibility, and it's like, you're just clearing the space to, to move into the next thing. And, so much of this framework or this cycle or whatever you want to call it is just creativity. It's just giving yourself like space to be curious about what's going inside your own self so that you can get creative, which you're already doing, but like maybe get a little bit more creative and allow in, whatever it is for you, like wherever messages come, right? Sometimes they come from like seeing a billboard that you didn't see before. Someone calls you and they say something and you're like, oh, wait, that makes me think. I forgot. Oh, we could do this thing. So again, this is sort of like what this is about today, is just like creating some space and some clearing for you all to like, okay, get in touch a little bit. Like, what am I envisioning that I haven't acted on yet? And why haven't I acted on it? Or what am I envisioning that I have acted on, but maybe I haven't communicated it to enough people? Or what am I envisioning that I've acted on that failed? And then I'm like, well, what did we learn from that? Right? Like, I mean, nothing good ever comes from not trying, right? So like, failure is such a beautiful lesson. So it's like, that's a whole other PowerPoint presentation, right? But it's like, again, it's like, oh, did I mess up? And then I all of a sudden became like a fearful person because I don't want to mess up again. It's like, well, no, we have to continue to mess up. So that's another one of those judgments, right? Like I screwed up, so now I can't possibly try to screw up again, right? So anyway, I just invite you to, think about what is that for you? What is something in your program that could use a little bit of this creative mindset, leadership infusion right now? Next up, or next slide. So that's kind of all I have. Nora put some questions into the chat that, we'll engage in together as we move forward today. My role again was really to just set the stage for the rest of the conversation and to, to also just kind of like, praise you all for everything that you do. And, again, just kind of invite you to just think, okay, who am I becoming? What do I want to create? What's stopping me? What big scary thing could we do? How do I need to shift? How do I even think of myself as a leader? Sometimes we don't, right? We're just like, well, I'm a leader over here when I coach the little league team, or at home when I'm, in charge of my kids, or whatever that is. But even though like our title might say director, you're like, well, I'm making sure I got enough staff, or I'm, making sure of this or this or whatever, but not thinking of yourself in terms of like someone who actually orchestrates like from a bigger place, right? Like, or leads the band into creating some harmony, or, whatever that is for you. We all have our own definition of what leadership looks like, but at the core of it, we all have an opportunity to make change. And so I know that, from the Friends of the Earth perspective, so much of this is about, shifting our school food service so that it's friendlier to the planet and better for our kids' bellies and their brains and, everything. So, I invite you to look at it from that lens as well. But that's also, I think, a love lens. So we'll dive into some reflection and connection. And I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to share this document that came from my conversation with Miguel way, way, way back in the way, way back time machine. And so thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen. And actually, Reka, I think if you don't mind just stopping to share your screen so we can see each other. Hi, everyone. Jen, that was such a great grounding, discussion and well, I guess now we're going to discuss, but great PowerPoint. And we also just have a couple of other people that I reached out to this past week just to who have also just been such profound leaders within their community. And I just wanted to give them a moment to share and discuss. And so I want to welcome Ken on this call. And Ken was recommended to us by Lucy Hicks. And Ken is the founding member of the California Food Policy Advocates. So he has been in this space for quite a long time, and we're so glad to have you. And just really a true activist in food policy work, legislation, and really a powerful leader around, policy and making change for our broader food service community. And so, Ken, I just wanted to welcome you and also just kind of get your perspective as a leader in terms of how any reflections that you have. I'm throwing you on the spot, but just reflections that you have as a leader, any ideas that this kind of makes you think about, and anything that you want to impart to other food service directors.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. I want to introduce my wife, Christina, who's here with me, and she and I do food policy work together currently at the Nutrition Policy Institute, which is part of the university. Leadership, I would define as doing whatever Lucy Hicks asks you to do. And I've exerted that leadership for 20 years or more, and so far, so good. The other thing that Lucy promised is that Robert Schramm and Dominic would be on the call, and they are, and it's just great to participate in anything together with them. Our institute has been doing the evaluation readiness work this past year for School Food for All. And we are very hopeful that we will be awarded the money to go on with the evaluation that starts this summer. It's an extraordinary opportunity, and it's an extraordinary recognition, I think, of what school meals mean in the community and what all of you mean as leaders in that field. If there was any possible sliver of a ray of light in the pandemic, it may have been the recognition of nutrition, of hunger, of food security, and of the role that the schools play, which most people never really acknowledge, but which is critical. And it caused Congress and USDA to make all kinds of changes, which you all implemented easily, smoothly, of course, and really gave new meaning to the phrase of supply and demand, because the supply just went away and the demand increased exponentially. And somehow or other you've made it work. I think what we've learned, Christina wants to talk some more about this because she's really been doing the work, is that the critical area that needs, quiet dog, that needs leadership is among the families, students, and parents who are least represented in the program. For free school meals for all to be successful, participation has to be at its maximum. And for participation to be at its maximum means that we need to pick up enrollment from the families that haven't been participating. An awful lot of them are low income, are minority, are obese or overweight in some cases, nutritionally insecure in others, and they need this program, and we need them. And so I think everyone knows that, and has given you the job to make it work. on the basis of all that you've made work so far. So I just want to turn it over to Christina with my final word of admiration and see what she's got to add.
I do want to add something. Hi, everybody. I bet that every single one of you who is a food service director has filled out the survey that Nutrition Policy Institute developed, and CDE sent you the link. As we tried to probe for your information that you could provide on exactly some of those questions that Jen presented on one of the slides in terms of your challenges, your dreams, et cetera. And some of you are also undergoing, I say undergoing, helping us with in-depth interviews, and all that information that we're collecting from you is intended to help CDE and help all of you and help your districts figure out how best to implement the new School Meals for All program. And we do want to, emphasize that Nutrition Policy Institute is here to learn from all of you. So please don't hesitate to shoot an email to any one of us on the team if you have further things that you want to let us know about challenges or information that we should have.
Thank you.
About any of that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Do you mind dropping your email into the chat for us too? And then I'm going to, so Jen kind of mentioned us really transitioning into a conversation together to really kind of think and reflect on these different questions that I just dropped into the chat. So I think we'd be remiss not to hear about leadership strategies from food service directors. And I reached out to Robert Schramm and Dominic to really give their perspective, since they are two incredible leaders within their food service communities. And so, Robert, I'm wondering if you don't mind kind of coming off mute and just sharing a little bit about how you think about your leadership in the day-to-day.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me. This has been an excellent time that we just don't realize it's been. We've had the opportunity to work closely with all of our members. We've gone through thick and thin through this battle, and we've survived. And, I was asked the other day at the board meeting, how are you going to deal with, this universal feeding? And I said, are you kidding me? That's not a problem at all. Look what we're just coming out of. This has been an opportunity to go meet with people, to greet with people, to sit down and have lunch with people. This is a time to build relationships, and I love building relationships and I love food. And so when you put those two things together, pretty much everybody eats food. And when we think about food, when do we eat food? We eat food always. When a baby's born, we have food. People get married, we have food. You go to, people die, you eat food. I mean, everything that surrounds life surrounds food and surrounds people. And so I think, as bad as everyone thinks the pandemic may have been, this has been a relationship building time. And early on in the pandemic, my boss said to me, aren't you afraid to go out to the sites? What if you get COVID? I said, more now than ever, I need to be at the sites. Now more than ever, I need to stand side by side with my team, and we need to do this together. So if it meant handing out boxes for a week's worth of food, or it meant handing out sacks, or it meant feeding kids in the cafeteria, or it meant putting food on a bus to transport to people that couldn't get to us, this has just really been a great time, and a great time to build relationships. We currently work closer now with our transportation department than we ever would have had there not been a pandemic. And the fact that they were willing to step up and transport food to kids because they couldn't transport kids. What a great time. And I love food. I'm very passionate about food, and that builds relationships as well. When you're working with people and you want to build yourself, and that's a lot of self-reflecting, as we heard kind of earlier, but also to build others. It's those relationships. When you go in there, you make some food with them, and you make quality food, you really raise the bar, and then they get to hear from the kids how much the kids love the food. So then in turn, that builds them, because now they're saying, look what we did. Years ago, before the pandemic, I started working on a recipe for baby back ribs. And people thought, you're crazy. No one's going to eat baby back ribs. The team had so much pride in giving those baby back ribs to the kids that at the end of the day, when they went home, they felt that they've made a difference in someone's life. And, you know, when you look at your communities, I know Ken had brought up about those folks that never eat with us. This was an opportunity for us to introduce to them food, because regardless of your income, people would come to get food. I mean, I had people showing up in Teslas. I had people showing up in old junkers, you know, but you fed them, and amazing how they look at the food and go, I didn't know you serve food like this, because they didn't know. So it was a relationship building time. And I'm optimistic that those same folks now will be sending their kids back to school, and they're going to dine with us, and we're going to take good care of them, and we're going to build more relationships as we go. Because as we know, most of those parents only remember what they had when they were in school. And that was probably, let's see, chocolate donuts, definitely sodas. We had plenty of sodas, plenty of chips, plenty of garbage. And so they realize that now that, oh, this is not what school food looks like at all. This looks nothing like what it was when I was in school. So I took this as an opportunity to team build and to really work with my team and raise the bar and stand beside them and be a part of that team and just immerse myself in there with them. And I think because of that, I've built relationships that'll be lifelong with some of my members. So I'm going to flip the coin and say that, you know, I think this pandemic was a great opportunity for school food to really move forward and really make an impact. And I hope it continues. So thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And Robert, you just added lentil nachos to your menu too.
We are really working. Yeah, we're working right now. Well, as we return, which we're return now, we're really working more towards the vegetarian, vegan options that are available to us and seeing what does that look like. I don't know if you know, but they just CIA and Copia just had a plant forward conference, which I unfortunately wasn't able to make because I was COVID, but they released the information today of their cookbook and stuff. So we hope to glean some stuff out of that cookbook and be able to really go forward and move in that arena. We, for the past few years, even prior to COVID, because we do 2 entrees at the K6 program, one of the entrees has always been vegetarian. So we've had that option available, but we haven't really sold it. You know, when you think of a bean burrito, sometimes you don't think it's vegetarian, and nor do the kids. They just think they like burritos, right? So some of it is how do you transition it and what does it look like and how do you educate the student population as we move forward using more vegetables and plant forward items. What does it look like and what is it going to be at the end of the day? So that's our quest for this year, this upcoming year, is to really move in that direction and really hopefully change the way people view food.
Thanks, Robert. And Dominic, do you want to chime in? I know you have a lot of wonderful things on your menu as well.
So yeah, well, thank you again for inviting me this afternoon, and you know, I couldn't agree with Robert even more of the heroic work and efforts that the staff of every child nutrition program across the country had done. You know, one thing I got to ask Robert, in December this year, I go 21 years in school food service. I think you have me beat, don't you?
Well, you know, I don't want to brag, but 26, I think I might have you by just a couple.
So if I remember when I went to West Contra Costa Unified, Robert was one of the first chefs, I believe, to come in with a culinary background in California and really started cooking food. Is that correct, Robert? Am I pretty right on?
Yeah, I came from the resort industry.
Right,
So I was responsible for 7 restaurants and 36,000 square feet of banquet facility. So yes, I came into food and I'm looking at food like food. I didn't know what a meat alternative is or bread grain. I'm like, you know, where's the steak? And give me some broccoli. So yeah, a little different lifestyle here.
So I think I was probably right after Robert as one of the, you know, few chefs that came into the school food service arena in California. As I said, going on 21 years. And for me, you know, I've been in the food like Robert a long time. But, you know, growing up in San Francisco in a food business family, you know, pretty much I'm going on, I believe, 45 years plus. I started out as a young kid, you know, with my dad in a butcher shop in the Sunset District and just kind of worked my way through. But this last November, I was just inducted into the Disciples of Escoffier, which is one of the largest gastronomic societies, chef societies in the world. And I'm so happy that I get to represent my colleagues as a school food service director, because I believe I'm the first one to be inducted in the United States. But to let them know that, school food service is not that school food that I remember when I first looked at it 21 years ago. And I remember my first food show, and I just, like Robert, did not understand it, didn't understand all this convenience food, didn't understand all this packaged food. And so, that really recharged my batteries as far as the leadership in my program, that, like Robert, I just want to cook food. You got to cook food. And that's why we have all these kitchens. That's why we have all this staff. This is why we have this huge infrastructure. And I did get to go to the Culinary Institute of America's Plant Forward Culinary Summit. It was another recharge. It was incredible. And to be around, people that think like we do, culinarians that can create dishes that gives you the creativity, because the USDA doesn't lend, as I read in the report from the Friends of the Earth this morning, doesn't really lend a lot of access to plant-based cuisine. It's basically really a core of a lot of soy products. I've came up with certain recipes using legumes such as white navy beans as an Alfredo sauce and things of that nature. So with that said, really, where I'm at is in my department, I'm just trying to connect the dots. And so one of the things I did last week is I'm hiring a chef, because 47 schools, 30,000 kids, people basically don't understand sometimes, and maybe you do, but the average person will not understand how many hats that Robert or myself have to wear. We're in human resources, we're in financial planning, we're in budgeting, we're in, food production, menu development, we're in procurement. I mean, operations of my trucks, my engine just blew. So now we got to wait 6 months to get an engine because I need the engine replaced to my delivery truck. I have a whole warehouse operations. There's just so many hats that we wear. So I've come to grips to say, it's great. I had a wonderful culinary career. I'm going to continue to do that, but I need somebody who could just solely focus 8 hours, if they can, on just food, because we're in the food business. And the one thing that I see in school food service, especially at the director level, if you're the driving force, there is so many things that will deter you, tear you away, move you in a different direction, when the whole purpose that we're here is for the food. And then I said this to our board last week. I says, we are the largest restaurant chain in the United States. I am the largest restaurant chain in central Contra Costa County. I have 47 restaurants. And so how can we have the largest restaurant chain? And, there's more chefs coming on board as directors into the programs, but not enough. And I feel that every school food service program should have a chef. So that's number one. So I'm getting a chef. And I wanted to make sure that they had, like me, growing up as a young cook, working at the Bohemian Grove for the Bohemian Club in the Russian River Valley, and understanding and learning high volume food service, how to prepare for 2,000 members at sit down dinners and breakfasts and things of that nature. And so I wanted to make sure that I have a chef that has been exposed. I don't need a culinarian who can write a cookbook. I need somebody who is a true chef who can teach my staff how to serve food, how to present food, how to create recipes and menu development to make them taste good. And then also in the case of, what we learned last week in Copia is really how to make, using legumes as a core, to how to make that a USDA reimbursable meal that can meet those vegan students. And especially for us, there's an uptick, and I don't know, Robert, if you've got them, but I have a big influx now of Muslim students coming in that are strictly vegan based. And so there is this huge, and from what we learned last week, the plant-based industry in sales by 2027 is going to be about $1.3-1.4 billion or more. And so this is not just some fad, some trend. This is here to stay, and more of the retail food service market is changing menus or making those offers. So That's one area. The other area connecting the dots is my facilities are old. So my facilities are so old, but the facilities reflect the quality of food. So that's something that I'm working on to connect with the chef and the facility, because my facilities stink. They're just horrible. They're 60 years old. They need to be torn down. So those are things that I'm trying to convince in selling the district. Luckily, I'm a member of the community. I'm a homeowner here. And so I have a voice because it's my taxpayer dollar too. And so that's number two. And then I'm heavily involved in the school garden program. And so the connection of the school garden to the salad bars, which we're coming back and implementing next year, to see that connection. And then the last, which is going to be the toughest, is we don't build our schools with dish machines anymore. I built Davis Senior High with a dish machine because I thought it'd be better presentation for food on a plate. But now with all these packaging supply issues, and pretty much all of our boats are sitting on a boat somewhere out in the ocean, our packaging is one other area of concern that we've got to look at. I mean, from my perspective, on how we present the food to students. And then lastly, if Ken and Christina, if you can do this, why can't we incorporate the cafeteria time when kids eat in instructional minutes to give them enough time to eat? We do not give them a dining experience. I just told, I have a UC Berkeley intern with me right now. And I just had that discussion with her. And I just says, basically in 1946, the National School Lunch Program, in my view, was really designed by the military. I mean, it's just mass institutional feeding, get in, get out. The peace sign goes up. You got 6 minutes to eat and you got to get out to the playground. It's really the same as when you've seen the Marines or the Army guys in boot camp coming in, they got 3 minutes to eat chow. It's kind of the same thing, how we treat our kids. So I would advocate, and I've said this publicly and I'll probably keep saying it, is there a way that we can, if we use a smarter lunchroom and set some criterias that the kids are getting an education in the cafeteria, can that be counted towards instructional minutes? Which I think there is a good argument for that. So those are some of the connecting to the dots that I have. There's probably more, and I know Robert's probably in the same situation. There's more to our programs, but for those are the vision that I have. My ultimate goal when I started this was my days at Bon Appetit back in the 90s in Silicon Valley as an executive chef, and to really treat the kids still the same as those B&I accounts that now going down to Sun Valley to the Google headquarters for the cloud has completely changed. And I feel very old, but it is not those cafes anymore. They now have curators that actually, so when you go get an espresso and a croissant, it is in a design of a French cafe. So completely changed, but that's Google, right? So, but ultimately, it's still the same experience that we should be giving the kids to that corporate employee, because the reason they do that is so the corporate employee can stay on campus and be productive. It's the same with our students. The happier they are, the better they're going to have a chance in the classroom for the next 2.5 hours. So with that said, I guess that's just my little take on, kind of my leadership and kind of the vision and where I'm taking my department.
Thank you both. Jen, I'm going to turn it back to you maybe to help facilitate more of a discussion here.
Sure. I mean, I love this group size. It's kind of perfect for a little group convo. So, I'm going to go back to Nora's questions, which require me going up to the chat. So I love this question. What is your vision for who you are as a leader? Is that resonating with anyone who would love to share?
Maybe someone who hasn't talked yet.
I'll kind of try and get that going, I guess. The vision realistically goes back to what you were saying earlier, Jen. If you can self-reflect, you can grow. If you can take a moment at the end of the day and say, how did that go? How did we do? All of those questions you ask, I think that's how you grow. And I've done that through my whole life since I started in this industry. And it's just, you always have to ask the question. And once you do, then you can have a better reality. But I don't think you have a reality if you're not willing to challenge yourself to say, how did we do today? Did we win? I used to work for a corporation that the owners would travel all the time into the restaurants and come visit. And when the owner would come in, he said, so every time you see him, are we winners or losers? He always ask that question. And when you can ask yourself that question, you know if you can go forward. And he came in one night, it was about 1:30 in the morning. I was closing and I had to be back at 5 in the morning to open the restaurant. And he said, are we winners or losers? And I said, right now we're losers. And he said, why? I said, this veggie tray that we steam, and this was back in 77, 78, we were doing steamed vegetable trays, cheese sauce. I said, we can't get it done fast enough. You know, to Dominic's point, these people need to eat, they need to relax. And if it takes 15, 20 minutes to get your veggie tray, that's cutting into your lunchtime if you're working. So I came back the next morning and he had tapped into the steamer and had it all pumped up. And he was just grinning and he said, he was so eager to show me how quickly he could do. Now I can do this veggie tray in 4.5 minutes. And it was just like, that's enthusiasm, you know, that gets you excited. So I walked in that day and when he told me that, and just to see this guy that's a multimillionaire smiling and so proud of himself after he stayed up all night to get the task done, I said, that's kind of the commitment. But he had to commit to that. He couldn't just walk away. And I think you gotta be honest with yourself and you have to reflect and say, okay, how did we do today?
Right. But you also were a leader in sharing that with someone else. Like you weren't afraid to say to someone else, you know, I think we were losers today, you know, and then it inspired someone to take some action on your behalf, you know, to help you win.
You kind of have to, I feel, so I've been in food service like ever for a very, very, very long time. I'm not going to say the years because then I'll give away my age. Like right after high school, and it's like probably 2 decades, around 2 decades. And basically what I've come down to in my thought process is if I work for small school districts and if I'm in a position of power per se, where I can make these choices, even though it will be more labor intensive on my end, but if I look at the bigger picture and it impacts our society as a whole and its improvement towards the whole earth economy, then those are the points that I give to make changes in my school district. And that's kind of the idea and the mentality that I'm bringing next school year, because next school year we should kind of have a normal school year, I hope.
You know, to the earlier point, I'm sorry, but I think we do things in National School Lunch, but we don't always fund them. And, you know, a lot of this is education that people need. So it's easy kind of for Dominic and I, when you come from the food side, you know the standard basics if you're going to have customers, because you don't have customers if you don't have standards. And so, you know, a lot of times what people think in the school environment, that a hamburger is a piece of meat on a bun. Well, where's the lettuce, tomato, pickle, and onion? What happened to my hamburger? And those create those own challenges. And I do think, to Rose's point, there kind of needs to be a bit of a menu mix. You're probably always going to have some of that processed food just to use up your commodities.
Yeah.
But to Dominic's point, if we can sway the USDA to bring in more fresh items that we can produce in-house, whether it be legumes or navy beans or lentils, or even I guess just anything, you know, that we can change it up and make this look a little different to the kids. And I think when we think about the funding formula, is it fair to say that, because we know everyone at the state says more scratch cooking, we really want to move towards scratch cooking. Well, that requires more labor. It's more labor intense. We don't mind doing it. We just have to have the labor to do it. And I don't know about anybody else, as we move to $15 an hour, that's nothing. I mean, I can't even hire anybody. I got a daughter that's 18 years old that works at Starbucks that makes about $18 an hour. Why is she going to come work here? You know? So there's some dollars that are going to be required, or there's going to be some new mind thinking that people are going to have to rethink. And I will say the USDA commodities, they're far better than they were when I got here. I mean, the fact that they can actually slice ham now was a huge step. And so we need to really be advocates for that. And as we talk to these people and say, okay, how are we going to change this world? But I do think a portion of it, and Dominic, I think hit the nail on the head, it's got to be education. You know, you might be in a situation where you can hire a chef, but not everybody can. And if you don't change that mindset and people go to those food shows and they come back thinking that a grilled cheese needs to be in a plastic, Mylar bag so they can bake it in the oven, it really doesn't have to be. So I think it's education too. And I think the vendors could probably use some education as to the needs of the student population. And that's where our voices come in when we go to the vendors booth. I went to a Cisco food show and I had a vendor come up to me and say, "What are you doing here? We don't have any school food here." I said, "I don't want school food. That's why I'm here. Okay, I want real food for real kids." I mean, that makes sense to me. So that's kind of my take on that. But I understand exactly the concerns that everyone's kind of feeling with the labor shortage, people not coming in, someone goes out with COVID, and now you're scrambling to go to the freezer to try and find something if you even have anything in.
Well, and to Robert's point, I think, for us, we have many advocacy groups that are focused on the ingredients of the food that we serve the student. Friends of the Earth, Center for Eco-Literacy. We are certified through Eat Real, the Eat Real certification process. And so many of those organizations, I think, but the one thing that we probably need to more focus on more and more is really infrastructure. We need to work with our unions, the people that we hire, and we're going to have a labor shortage. I'm just like what Robert and Rose just said. Labor shortage is just incredible. This is the best labor cost and food cost I've ever had in my whole food service career. I mean, we're just killing it. I'm making so much money, it's not even funny. And that's how I get to hire a chef, right? But really is to work with the unions and train the staff. We don't hire culinarians. We don't typically hire somebody who came from a culinary some in a culinary background, but not with a culinary education. So it's very difficult for them to understand the same passion that we do. And for me, that when I need my fix, I go to Netflix and I watch Chef's Table, and I watched, how Alan, Prasad, Michelin 3-star chef, changed his whole menu to a complete vegan menu and still kept his Michelin 3 stars. Now, that intrigues me because I'm a culinary freak, but for others, maybe not. But that passion that was there. And so how do we get that passion into our food service staff who want to try? They just don't know. And so that is something that I'm trying to address. And I'm trying to, with this chef culinary manager, is to start an in-house culinary program. It's part of a professional growth program that if I teach you, if we go through modules of sauces, there's no reason we have to buy a cheese sauce to make macaroni and cheese. Kids like macaroni and cheese. There's nothing wrong with it. Or there's no reason we can't make our own teriyaki sauce, as an example. But if the staff doesn't know how to do that, and then to give a recipe and have them execute it where it's standardized in every school site, that's quite a challenge. So really what I'm trying to do in professional growth is to have modules. So if it's sauce making, if you accomplish this, you get an extra $500 at the end of the year. If you do, some kind of vegetable preparation for the salad bar, we'll give you another $500, and you can probably cap out and earn. Now, we have money because we make money, and like I'm sure everybody, I utilize and I like to say kind of manipulate the USDA foods in proteins, in cheese, and certain things, and know how to use that USDA commodity, what we like to call foods or brown box, which is always interesting because you can never find an ingredient deck on any of the USDA foods, which is always interesting. But that's one way. And I think working with our unions, because the unions need to get on the same page as us that have the same passion. And some of them do. And I think the pandemic for us, we made 85% of the food that we served in our curbside distribution because we could not reduce labor. So the only choice I had was we had to cook to reduce that food cost expenditure, and still ended up making money during that program. But I turned my high schools into secondary production kitchens. And we made our own burritos and made our own pizza and made, our own muffins and made our own cinnamon rolls and cheese zombies that we're known for and all these things. So, luckily that's one of the things the pandemic also taught staff was really how to cook again. how to really cook and, but now how to do it in a school site setting, that's going to be the challenge for them. And that's something I think we all need to kind of address, that infrastructure issue. Because once they can cook, then we can all cook. Even though, yes, you still need that process. Every once in a while, you're going to put in that process. Every once in a while, am I going to serve a corn dog? Yes, I'm going to serve a corn dog. Kids like corn dogs. Our purpose of the meal program is to make sure that kids are happy and fed, so they go back in the classroom, they learn. That's part of what we are as a support service team. So, but I think, we can still probably, if we can get to the point of staff training and to get that passion into their souls, then we have something that we can play with and begin to start cooking even more than what presently some of us are doing now.
So thank you, Dominic and Robert and Rosa and Ken and all of you and Sally for all just kind of joining in on this discussion. I feel like we could probably be here all afternoon trying to solve the world's problems together. Unfortunately, we don't have all that much more time. And so I just we have 15 minutes before the end of the call. And I wanted to, first of all, thank Jen so much for all of your leadership on this. And Jen, I don't know if you have any final reflections or way to wrap up. Putting you on the spot.
No, I mean, it's, I just have to say, you are all just like, you're in it, right? You're just in the work, and it's a complex system. And, my invitation to you is just to kind of, take a moment to just like be in your human system every once in a while, and just kind of like, taking those moments to just, let the human system guide you towards, whatever the next best step is, and the next best step, and the next best step. Because, like you say, it's just, you've all addressed like the multitude of issues that are a part of, the school food environment. And, you're all doing great work, and I'm just grateful.
I'm going to kind of wrap up with, in terms of next steps for us in this series, we are going to be sending out an email to everyone who's participated with a Google folder of all the recordings of the sessions, materials, PowerPoints. We'll also be including a certificate for all of you for successful completion of this series, and some professional standard learning codes for each session as well. So, and then the survey. We're going to be pushing the survey out, trying to get everyone to fill this out as much as they can. And with that said, I'm gonna leave a few minutes at the end of this call just for you all to fill that out. And I just wanted to really quickly just say thank you to all of you who have participated. We were looking at the data from this peer learning series, which we'll probably share in that email. And we've had over 80 different people participate. We've had lots of different school districts represented. I don't have all the exact numbers right now, but also just we've seen the same people kind of coming week after week, and it's been wonderful. That was my vision when I was thinking about this session, was to really create a space where people can really build relationships with one another and come week to week and see the same faces and get to know one another and talk to each other. And so I just want to commend this incredible, incredible group. You all inspire me every day. And I'm like so overjoyed to be in this position and just to be able to work with all of you, because you all are so inspiring to me. Emma, Lucy, I don't know if you want to come off mute and if there's anything you all want to say as we kind of close out this call.
I just want to say that I have been very fortunate to meet some wonderful people through this peer-to-peer learning series that we've done. To actually see you face to face, those that I have only talked to on the phone or had Zoom calls with in the past, I am really inspired as well, as Nora said, by all the work that you do. And I do really want to thank my dear friends Robert and Dominic for joining this call today, and Ken, who has left. But I think that all three of those individuals are incredibly inspirational in terms of school meals, and have wonderful visions of taking it to new heights, all of them, and they are
I feel
doing
like
it.
all of you have great, like everyone here has just such
Yeah.
profound visions. I'm so blown
Agreed.
away.
So a lot of you are doing such amazing things, and we commend you. So thanks, Nora.
Yeah.
I'd also like to add that I'm just really grateful for, being in this space and, being able to share what I've learned with you all during session 3. I was having to edit the recording so that we could upload it for everyone, and just kind of reflecting on our entire series and really, going, oh yeah, that was such a good point. Like, wow, there's some great nuggets of information and sharing from everyone, and it just feels like a really powerful series all in all. And so thank you all for being a part of it.
Great. Well, I think with that said, I'll close it out. It's kind of a weird ending, but I feel like we start a little bit strange. We trickle in, and we all trickle out. So it's very appropriate, I feel like.